let's just do this once again here. I would like to say welcome to everybody who is joining us today for this very important EMA discussion. My name is Thiago. As I mentioned, during this session that we have today, you're going to be participating only through written form, so you can send us questions. For us, it's very interesting when these discussions are interactive, when people are responding to what we're saying, and it definitely allows us to take things one way or the other. And I see that people are presenting themselves here. If you haven't yet, please do tell us who you are, where you're logging in from, and also even if you want to say which masters, Erasmus Mundus masters or doctors did you do, that's also interesting for us. So with no further ado, I would like to invite Pavan to the floor. Pavan is the current president of the EMA Association and Erasmus Mundus Association. So Pavan, welcome, and you can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Thiago, and a big happy morning or happy afternoon. And also maybe some people are in the evening zone. So first of all, thank you very much for making time to be part of this webinar, which is quite important. It's a part of the series of webinars which we have been doing since October now. And as I don't know how many of you have read the action plan, maybe you can say yes. I'm not sure, Thiago, if you can do a poll, but it'd be nice to get to know among how many of you in the attendees have actually read the EMA action plan 2018-19, the EMA survey, which was published way in October regarding the voice of EMA members. That's you, whoever has contributed to that survey, because all this particular work has been going on for the last year now, and this is kind of the final conclusion where we are trying to put in the effort to really bring about the realignment of the EMA structure to the needs of the EMA community and need for the future for the sustainability of the organization. So I don't have exactly a presentation, but I would like to keep this much more like an interactive discussion because we've had several presentations. I don't want to repeat the same format, but rather go digging deeper into how or what are the changes we have with regards to the organization itself. So some of you have been proactively involved in this process. Some of you have been following the discussions. Some of you have given a lot of feedback, and some of you have just been more like an observer or passive listener. So it's important, like today, that you guys are well prepared and understand this, because many of you are going to be part of the General Assembly. Either you have been invited because you've been active in certain projects and certain teams, or you're self-funding yourself, like many of us, to come to the General Assembly. So this will be one of the tasks at the General Assembly, and before, in the previous General Assembly, we used to spend a considerable amount of time to discuss this when we meet, and especially for those who are very new, it was always very challenging with the terminology, with all this complication. So that's why we started doing this webinar series to really give an update about what's been happening in terms of the process, which is critical to be discussed, but at the same time minimize and make this whole process efficient during the General Assembly. It's been a lot of good effort from several different people, many of them with legal background and with the internal affairs team who have been putting effort to devise this. But of course, the whole steering committee and many active members have contributed to this particular new amendments to the statute, which has impact on the association. So it is a mandatory thing for those who are coming to the GA who will be present physically. It doesn't matter whether you're funded or self-funded, to have a clear understanding of the existing statute. And also I'll be presenting the new draft of statute, which is now under review with the European Commission. That so this, hopefully I would be very happy if every member who is going to be at the GA kind of support us and ensure that this is done this year, because this has come from the need of EMA members. That's you. So moving forward, so how many of you are, it's a bit sad that I cannot see the responses here of the people.
I can help you. Yeah, a couple of people mentioned that they read the survey and the plan for 2018 and 2019.
Okay, so as I said before, it is very important that you really please read those things. I want to make it very clear, one thing for sure, and we will be very strict about it, is that no basic questions or no questions which were addressed in the webinar series will be addressed at the GA. We're not going to spend time on trying to again equip people and provide people information, because a lot of things have been shared via newsletters. If you have signed up for the newsletters, a lot of things have been made online, available in every social media on the website. So it is important, and more or less, I would say it's a duty of you guys as a member, as an active member, to follow the organization. And as you know, GA is one of our main forum. Especially many of you are coming for the first time, so it's nice that you spend some time to prep up. I'm sure you'll still be having questions. Of course, you can talk to the peers, and if some questions are definitely not answerable by your peers and stuff, we can have discussions at the GA. But it's important that you spend some time to really go through these documents, because please remember that the European Commission is spending a decent bit of money to bring everybody on board in Vienna.
And
So
Pavan, can I just because I know people often they wanna do what's right, and sometimes they just don't know where to go to. So I just want to reassure people that we will email you before the General Assembly still. And I think one of the ways we can do it as well is put all the videos and all the documents that you need to go through in one Google Drive folder. And this way, maybe you can even download on your smartphone. And while you're on your way, sometimes on a 10-hour flight or so, you can go through and watch things instead of Netflix, maybe. You can watch these videos that Pavan has mentioned. So this information will come to you again. Don't be worried about it. But yeah, we do invite you to, to do this homework before you get to the meeting. So go ahead, Pavan. I'm sorry.
thanks, Thiago. And already many of the information has been mentioned, but we will also, as Thiago mentioned, we will put it in a one place so that you all have access to it and can look into it whenever you find time. But just ensure that you please be prepared. That's the only request we have. Regarding the statue itself, I'll just try to talk through the bigger picture of what we're trying to do here. So there was a lot of inputs which was given by the members through the survey that, of course, we need to have some kind of realignment to come across more as a professional NGO, because the outside world need to see our impact and a visibility in a more professional manner. So since 2006, when the organization was initiated, the structure has evolved organically, which is very natural to meet the needs of the structure. But then the needs were very much focused on the internal needs of the organization. But only in the last few years, the focus has becoming more and more to take care of not just necessarily the members, but also the relevant stakeholders, because that's one way for us to generate interest, impact, and also gain a lot of visibility and trust among the relevant people, so that they see us as a change maker. And many of you were present in this change makers event. I can see some of the names here in the attendees list in November 2017. So that was the first step put forward by this team, by the steering committee, to ensure that we not only focus on developing products and services for our members, develop the structure for our members, but also try to focus on the external stakeholders. In that way, we will be able to also generate interest and funds. So with that keeping in mind, we started with this work on the statute amendments, and there is no change, of course, in the name where we are registered, the vision, mission, and aims on a global level, because it's still, we are serving the interest of the students and alumni. But in the internal regulations document, we will be putting in much more specific objectives for the next 7 years. Because if we change the vision, mission, and aims of the organization now, it needs to go through the Belgian king or the royal decree, and it takes a longer process. So we like to just stick to, because it's a bit more generic and it's kind of touches upon the overall function of EMA, and we would like to just keep this as it is. But in the internal regulations, we will be much more specific and detailed with regards to the objectives of EMA and align with EMA's strategy 2025. So that will be the main focus. So the title, for those of you who can see my screen, the title 1 in the statute remains the same. It has no differences. And the title 2, the vision, mission, and aims, are no changes. Any questions on these two titles so far?
So if so far you have questions, folks, you can send in questions now. Try to be as concise as possible in writing them, as objective as possible. Morse has mentioned here that things are clear. For the moment, not, says Afrodita. And Yasmin also said that things are good. So I think for now we can continue then.
Great. Okay, so moving to the title 3, which is the structure. And this is where the biggest, I would not call change, but the evolution, I think that's a better word. The evolution has happened. And if you see, or if you've been active part of EMA for the last several years, even this was mentioned by the previous steering committee, then headed by Apio and supported by EMRA and team. So they also started mentioning about the importance and need for realignment. But there were several other challenges with ESA, with Alliance, etc. So the focus was not done. So we started with the focus like we have to ensure that this happens in our term, because this is very critical for the sustainability, especially when the funds which is coming from the European Commission is drying out. It is important that we start really amplifying our focus on generating external sources, also making the whole EMA governance more independent, and also the work what we put in. It's a lot of hours. Many of you are not aware how many hours every day me, my team, and the active members spend on trying to get the things rolling, the discussions with the service provider, with the commission. It's a lot of work, even to just, and as you know, all of us are volunteers. We all have full-time jobs or we're studying. So it is an extra commitment. So we thought everybody who is actively involved should have some kind of an honorarium salary, or at least some kind of a subsistence should be generated. So keeping these things in mind, we said, okay, let's try to make this whole structure leaner, simpler. And that really also stood out with the survey which we carried out. Many of the active members, so as you, also said the same thing. Like, okay, we need a bit more professional way to align ourselves and to come across as an NGO with everybody wants to partner with, everybody wants to work with. So keeping that aspect in mind, we are going to move away from this steering committee terminology. So, and also there will be a quite leaner way to work the organization, and also it will be more empowerment at the different organizational level. So there will be president, vice president, but that team will be supported by the secretariat in the sense that I can just show you this slide, not slide, but this. So if you see the, sorry, this is moving too fast. Since I've zoomed it, it's a bit tricky. Yeah, so if you see here, it mentions in the Title 3, Article 4.1 and 4.2 that basically our organization is consisting of General Assembly, the steering committee, here after the SC, and the following service teams, network programs, CRs, etc. So we are trying to move away from this language. As I mentioned briefly before, General Assembly will remain the same. So that will be the highest body of our organization. And I think it's, with all fairness, it's basically the community needs to decide the bigger decisions. And then to execute those decisions, the daily management should be done by the executive body. So the steering committee will be named into that. So the presidential team, the vice president, will have more support staff or support system. It's not been existing before, so we are trying to implement that, and that will be the main focus there. But we're also trying to move away from this terminology called service teams and change it to called working units, because it's more important and more professional, because we are a working unit more than providing services. The program representatives will become program ambassadors, and also it will be more focused. And I will show you in the new statute how all these things is playing on. And also the biggest change in the whole structure is having a clarity of roles and responsibility between the different people, who does what, and a clear flow of communication and a workflow will be the emphasis. And so that will be the main focus on the structure. Any questions so far on the structure? Yeah, I will, Marsha, I will come back to you on the secretary versus the executive board. I will show that in the new statute. Maybe I can just go through with it parallelly. So if you see the new statute of the Title 1, is everybody able to see it? Yeah. So the new statute, if you see the Title 1 and the Title 2 is same. So the Title 3 this is where a little bit change which occurs. So General Assembly will be General Assembly. The Management Board, so will be the overall, which consists of Secretariat and the Executive Board. I will go through it detailedly later. And also, if you see the structure, we will have the working units. It will be further detailed in Title 8, so I will get back to that later. But just for you guys to get an overview, this is how the structure is going to look like in the new new alignment. So the biggest, just to answer you more, say the secretariat is basically, or the administrative teams is that it broken down into three: the legal and internal affairs, because we have realized since we have become a legal entity ourselves, it is so important to follow the Belgian law and rule, and we have not been up to date, and we really need a strong competence and hopefully a person, he or she, present in Belgium to help us with this. So we are also establishing something called EMA Spark project, which will trigger these mechanisms. And the same thing goes for finance and accounting. We really need an external accountant or a team of people look into these aspects, because if we start generating funds, if we start getting projects, it needs to be managed. And then we need to have a fully dedicated project support team, which helps EMA to generate projects and also can coordinate with the units to work on several projects. And I'm not getting into all these things right now because I want to do one by one the titles, but this is how the feedback has been generated in the last 1 year, and it's been several rounds of review and discussions with several key stakeholders, and this is the best outcome which has been here. To answer Daniel, yes, to a larger extent, this is to change the name, but also you will see that there will be much more clear job description under this name, which has not been the focus also. I will discuss that later when I cover the Title 8, like what is the bigger change, because of course, name is one thing to come across professional, but also the task within the teams will change, not necessarily at a very micro level, but it will change in the way we are organizing ourselves in terms of the workflow. And also there will be a lot of new tasks and new activities, which we've already started doing it, but they don't have a home, they don't have a place right now in the current structure. And that's why we are trying to focus on that. Salis, I don't understand your question. Like, what do you mean by how do they fit into the new structure? If you could elaborate, that would be great. Yeah, sure, Yasmin. So basically, Daniel mentioned that actually it's his question was actually is changing the name but not the function. And my answer is no, it's not only the name, but also the activities within each function will change significantly. Salis asked, how do they fit into the new structure? I'm going to explain that in detail, but it would be good if you elaborate what exactly you are trying to ask. Yeah, glad to hear, Yasmin, that you're excited to see policy and quality assurance as part of the unit, because I think it's a very important unit to be focused on, especially we are in the higher education sector and we differentiate ourselves because of what we contribute to this area. Will the program ambassadors now? Yes, I will. So the question was from OPME, is that will the program ambassadors now under the student? Yes, I will detailedly mention each of this unit in detail in the coming presentation. Yeah. So you saw the title 3. So this is the bigger change in the it's mainly the workflow you all have to remember, and secondly it's the clarity of each unit, what exactly they focus on, how they can target, and thirdly it's more about ensuring we comply with the legalities and law of Belgian um, NGO. That's where we are registered. So this is where we are heading so far. So basically, the regional ambassador or CRs, they will be called as um, ambassadors of Erasmus Mundus program. So, okay, maybe I can mention it already here, is that we want to move away from the concept of elections to purely selections. We don't want to create this scenarios with it's been like that. Unfortunately, I've been in EMA for 9 years now, and I've seen various stages of EMA's evolution in a very positive way. But also, I've seen that many of the roles have been taken just because people wanted to have a tag on their CV or wanted to sound good on their CV. And but in reality, that really never helped, because it's very easy when you know some people to get some votes and then become kind of come into position, but then it's extremely difficult in a volunteering organization and as us to really keep the people motivated. So if even one person doesn't function the way he or she should have functioned, it has a significant impact on the overall community. First of all, it's a volunteering time, so things do take time than what's expected. But then when one person just cuts off, it means that that whole project, the whole activity ends up not progressing. So we want to move away from this concept. So all the director roles, the team leader roles, the sub active roles will be selected by an independent, I will go through that later in detail, by an independent advisory team consisting of external and internal stakeholders. It will be a transparent process. It will be a very important process based on the qualification and the background of the person to lead these roles. And even for president and vice president, we want the General Assembly and the whole community to elect. There will be much more stringent rules, or not called rules, but criterias in which one can become president and vice president, because it's important that person, he or she, very clearly knows what they're signing up for, because it is a lot of work. Means I don't want to kind of scare people here, but it takes minimum 4 to 5 hours every day being in that role. And weekends, you have no clue how much. And this is the commitment what we're asking for someone to who is coming into these roles. And then people should be willing to do this for free. And that's an important, and not only that, but also have a clear understanding and awareness about the history of the organization. Yes, the question is the steering committee transformed into management board? The question was from Nicola. Um, kind of, the steering committee will be called as executive board, which is under the management board, but now the management board also consists of the administrative capacity. That means the decision making power is basically with the executive board, but the administrative body, or the secretariat, consists of the administrative teams. So the idea is that it's very difficult for executive body to execute things without having a clear idea about the legalities, having idea about budget, and not necessarily everyone in the steering committee have those backgrounds. So it's important to keep them separate. How will be the selection be done to equal representation? What kind of a selection are you talking about? So Margaret asked question, how will the selection be done to ensure equal representation? Selection of the executive, selection of the directors, president, vice, whom are you specifically talking about? Or is it in general?
For those, yeah, just a reminder for those sending in questions and comments, try to put, try to finish, the full idea in just one paragraph. Don't send us multiple messages, because then it gets when it's different messages, it gets separated here, and then it's a little confusing to see the beginning and end. And yeah, so Pavania, it's nice that you're reading the questions, because the participants, they cannot see the questions, so it's always nice to read them out, the ones that you choose to comment on. Okay.
Sure, thank you. And Nicola, yes, the question was, the secretariat is the administrative part. Absolutely. So it's basically the administrative teams, which you saw, the 3 teams, but the heads of this team will be part of the management board, but not the whole team itself. Yeah. So the question from Salis was, after the GA, when the amendments are passed, what's the timeline for these changes to come into effect? So the current steering committee has the mandate and term until September 2019. So there will be already the process of selecting the new unit, the directors, and the new teams whatsoever already from February to September. So that will be the process. So we want the transition to happen before the existing steering committee kind of goes away. So the process will start immediately, because we don't have much time to wait on this. So the question was, selection of all the officials to EMA for all categories. You mentioned all these things will be very well explained and detailed out in the internal regulations document, which also will be shared. So we have the existing version, which was shared with all of you. But it's going to undergo changes, because our legal team now, I can even take the names, Prashant, Miriam, and Zara, have been working really, really hard with support of Tom and myself to put this. And we will have the first draft ready by this Wednesday. It will be reviewed by the steering committee, then it will go for another review by them. So hopefully by end of this month or first week of February, we will also share the updated version of the internal regulations to you guys. So if you have any questions on this new statute draft, please send it across to us, especially if you have any comments on making some changes to this. We're more than happy to look through it and review even before the GA. Yeah. So those were the questions so far. So I can move to the Title 4, which is also important. So if you see in the old statute, the title was basically members of the organization or the membership. Sorry. Yeah. So it was regarding the membership, and how it was mentioned was, any prospective student or alumni of Erasmus Mundus program can be a member. And then there was a list of this candidacy of member and all those things. We want to just make it simpler. And also we want to be more inclusive, because there's been a whole lot of discussion regarding Action 2 since 2013 now, but we never really managed to get them on board. And that is a biggest change in the new statute amendments. If you see the membership, we made it very simpler. There are 3 categories of membership: a full member, Like any person, he or she who has undergone Erasmus Mundus joint master's or joint doctoral degree will be qualified as a full member. When I say Erasmus Mundus joint master's and joint doctorate is the Action 1 program. Our affiliated members will be any student, alumnus, or consortium members. That means that of Action 1, Action 2, and Action 3, or any other such programs will be. So these Action 1, Action 2, Action 3 are the different kinds of programs which is developed by the European Commission under the Erasmus Mundus program. So Action 1 focuses on the mobility, Action 2 on the partnership, Action 3 or policy, and Action 3 on the capacity building. So in Action 1, it was mainly these joint masters, joint doctorates. In Action 2, it was like a short-term mobility. It could have been done by anybody. The person doesn't have to be a student, and it ranged from few weeks to even 2 years. And then Action 3 were completely universities or consortiums taking part in projects. We want to make it very simpler. So we want to really uplift the groundwork and capacity of EMA in the visibility of the world. And this gives us this flexibility that affiliated members will be more like supporters of Erasmus Mundus Association. They're more than happy to contribute, to volunteer, to be supportive of EMA's activities. Most of them, as you see, are basically in respective countries because these were all like short-term mobility. So it's a great way also to collaborate with people who still have the brand name of Erasmus Mundus but had a different experience, and to have joint activities in the local level. And then honorary members are somebody who we think could really significantly have contributed to EMA or would be a best fit for EMA in future, so that we can bring him on board, which can really enhance the scope and visibility of EMA. For example, we would like to honor the current UN General Secretary, for example. I'm just giving, because this person has been a big advocate of education and on mobility and internet. So it's kind of these people we could, or a program coordinator who has done amazing work and really working hard to connect the students, alumni, and EMA. So it could be at any different level. The honorary membership could be given. Any questions on the membership? This is a big change, but we see that this is a positive change, and this has been discussed time and again, because there was a lot of debate about including other actions into our membership. But I think this is the fair and clear way for us to move forward, because they also deserve a home. Of course, they will not be involved in the governance of the association, because that is our legal entity, and will continue to do that. But they can always be supporters and involve with us in doing joint activities if and when required. And they can also be supported in some events if we have extra fund. Any major questions, observations on Title 4? Tiago, I don't see any questions. This means people are very clear, or?
Yeah, you're seeing the same as me. So yeah,
Okay.
for now we don't have any questions, but maybe you can move on and then yeah, so Sally's asked, so no voting rights for the affiliate members. I think you said, what, as you mentioned, I think it wouldn't be the case, right?
Yes, so basically the vote is only for the full members, absolutely. And if you see, it is a bigger change. Before, even the voting was reserved only for service teams and the ones who were invited, like CQAB didn't have voting rights, PRNet didn't have voting rights, many different teams didn't have voting rights. So we are trying to make it leaner. So any EMA member, whether it is self-funded or fully funded by us or whatever, if he or she is present at the GA, has the right to vote for the constitution of our organization. As simple as that is. But if they're affiliated member or honorary members, I don't see the reason why and also the legal team don't see the reason why. And the feedback what we got from the steering committee is that we don't see the reason why they should have the voting rights for our functioning. Okay, so, and if you see, this was very complicated. This whole article, this whole title regarding members, the candidacy for membership, yeah, it was just extremely complicated. So what we are trying to do is keep it very simple, keep it very direct, understandable for us, understandable for somebody who is not from our organization. So moving to the chapter 2, it's basically in the old statute amendment was EMA community and organizational structure. So it used to be called as service teams, and then it was like a service team must elect a coordinator. It has a 2-year mandate, and then yeah, so there were several list of things under which it was mentioned. There was regional chapters, networks, program representatives, country representatives. It was just, yeah, as I said in the previous years, it was based on the need which developed then, but it just went a bit more complicated and a bit out of hand, especially it became a mean of just having elections for the positions, but rather than tangible work. So what we're trying to do or change based on the important thing is, yeah, sorry, Salis. I think the Article 8 in the new statute explains the voting rights of a full member, a voting right of an affiliated and an honorary member. So what I shared before stands same still, but you can read it when we send it out. And the termination of membership is also very similar to what used to be there before. They've just made some of the languages much more clearer and simpler. Uh, so so this whole article in the old on the membership will change into these things. It's very simpler. So the new title, which didn't exist in the previous one, is about the selection committee. That means that the selection committee will be responsible for appointment of the management board. So except for the president and vice president, who shall be elected by the General Assembly, of course. So basically, right now, it's my duty, along with Lucia, to bring up this selection committee, but we will not be proactively involved in the selection of the people. So we want it to be an independent jury. I don't know how many of you have been watching this EMA Awards news, which is going around now, and today is the last date. By the way, if somebody wants to nominate yourself or nominate somebody, today is the last date. And it's a good learning for us because this is the first time we have brought an independent jury completely consisting of non-EMA members. Not necessarily non-EMA members. We have one previous president, but the rest, everybody is from different part of our stakeholder who knows about EMA, who knows about our existence, but don't know anything about the people and their contributions. And we made this process of trying to have these awards in a very professional and transparent manner. And this is going to be the similar thing also for the whole selection of the new directors, new team leaders for the teams. Of course, this will be in consultation with the steering committee, but the steering committee not necessarily have an influence on this process. So that's the whole idea, to bring qualified people, qualified background people for these various roles. And the selection committee will also be qualified. If you're, for example, if you're picking communication and IT leader, the idea is to have the selection committee consisting of people with that background. And also we hope that the person who is nominating or putting their CV for this position of this director has those relevant qualifications. Because we have seen in this previous steering committees and the current steering committee, it is a lot of work. It is difficult for us with the just 2 years mandate to have on-job training, you see. So it's also an important way for us to bring the right relevant people. The on-job training can happen at a team level, at a sub-team level, but not at the leadership level. So that's the message. So yeah, so it will be purely based on qualification, and the procedure, etc., is completely described in the internal regulations, which you can see. Paulina asked a question. I kind of missed that part of voting rights for affiliate members, so they could vote at GA or no. Pauline, as I said, I can just show it here very clearly to you. So a full member can apply for being president, vice president, and vote in the elections, and can also apply to be candidate for any working unit's administrative team, and also can apply to become an employee or volunteer, because we might have paid positions, yeah. And then the affiliated member can apply to join any of the working units or administrative team. They're welcome. They can apply to become an employee or volunteer, but they don't have the voting rights. They don't have the rights to apply for the candidate. Yeah, I think it needs to be made still clear. They don't have rights to also apply for taking the leadership role. It's not clear even in this internal statute. Now that I'm reading it second time, we will make that very much clear here. Yeah, when we say apply as a candidate to join, this is not correct in the honorary member and in the affiliated member. We will change this. Yeah. Going to the selection committee, that's fine. So GA, it's very much similar to what it used to be before. We have just added in a small minor tweaking in with regards to, in case if there needs to be an extraordinary GA, which happened in 2018 because we didn't have budget or we didn't have any funds whatsoever to do a physical GA. So then we might have to call some exceptional GA in those cases. And if you see, it's very similar. We just made it very simpler in terms of, and also the attendance, the GA, we just tried to make it more simpler. So everybody is invited to come to GA. So we want to move forward more towards people if they can raise their own funds, or if the coordinators or if the consortium pays for them. But ultimately, it's more about generating self-fund to come to these kind of large events. We've also tried to make attendee list very simpler. So there are no big changes from the previous to now. Only thing is, it's very simpler that there will be an invitation for every member to participate in the GA. So every full member and also affiliated member is eligible to participate and attend GA. But then the executive board will have capacity to invite certain EMA and non-EMA members, fully or partially funded, to attend the GA based on their support and activeness so far. We've made very clearly what are the powers of GA, which was not very clear in the previous statute. So that's a big change, which we have done from the previous one. So the language has made it way much simpler than the previous GA. And also it's much more clearer what exactly the voting rights, what exactly is the simple majority, etc. are described very clearly here, and also some details about minutes, etc. So these are remaining very similar to the earlier ones. So I guess I see no questions until Article 6. So if it's okay, we can move to Article 7 regarding the management board. So as mentioned before already, so this used to be called, this was Title 5, and now it's Title 7 in the new statute. It used to be called Steering Committee. As you see, it was very cumbersome, all these details, and it was a very complicated process to reach the stage. So we have just made a significant change in the language. Please remember, I think I forgot to mention before when the start of this webinar, why we're doing this. If you know that every statute amendments means that we need to get a notary from Belgium present in the GA, and then the notary needs to witness how we are voting it. And the voting has to happen both in English and French, and the approval has to happen in that manner. So every time we bring about change to the statute, that means it's going to have effect on this whole process, and then it has to be documented, registered in Belgium, it needs to be approved. It takes significant time. So what we're trying to do is to make this whole thing leaner and cleaner, so that at least for next 10 years, or maybe hopefully even more, there will be no changes to the statutes. It will remain the same with little bit minor changes, but then we're trying to really do the daily management of the organization, put all those things into the internal regulations, because that's very easy for us to manage internally and for the General Assembly to vote it out. Because with that, it gives us a bit more flexibility to not having this worry of to comply all the time with the Belgian law, because as long as the statute complies, that's safe and sound for us, and we can really be flexible in the way we want to organize the internal regulations. I hope that's clear for everybody. And that's one of the reasons why we're also trying to make this whole statute very leaner, because it was getting very cumbersome in the old statute. So the steering committee, which consists of now some of the service team leaders, president, vice president, will be broken down into management board. But this, if you want to just replicate exactly what the steering committee was, it will become now executive board. The executive board consists of the directors of the board and the secretariat and the president, vice president, of course. And the secretariat will consist of president, vice president, and the 3 administrative team heads. So the way also we could move forward is that either the president or vice president can focus on one of the aspects, either the secretariat and executive board, and then they can always back each other when it's required, because now we're everywhere, and it is a lot of work to be in everywhere and every place. So this is one of the way how this could be taken care of. So somebody can take the portfolio of secretariat and ESA board, and then one can take the executive board. Basically, the vice president could be the one who takes the ESA board and secretariat, or ESA board and presidential executive board. So that's something which we could be deliberated and explained further in the internal document, internal regulations. These are the rights and duties of management board, which is quite similar to what was mentioned in the previous statute. And yeah, there is this little bit distinction about what exactly a secretariat stands for, who exactly are the executive board, the appointment removal of the board. So ultimately it's and what kind of a power the General Assembly has on these executions. And these working units and administrative teams, they're detailed out in the internal regulations. We are not really going in depth regarding them in the statute as it was in the previous statute. It was quite detailed out in the previous statute, so we are trying to move away from that. The new statute brings more important documents, especially on the official documents and dissolution. So there have been some changes to comply directly with the Belgian law. In the previous, it was not very clear. So we're trying to bring those on board. So it's very similar to what was there before, but in a bit more accordance with the Belgian law. So I'm not going to dig in deeper here with related to this. So it's all the standard guidelines, standard process, standard procedures which needs to be followed are all explained here in these articles. There are no big change. These are like a standard things which needs to be there as a part of article. And there's some new titles on protection of data on the GDPR, which was not there in the previous one. There's also miscellaneous in case it's not covered, which holds what right. So there are some minor additions and changes which is being added on here. But okay, there's a question from Nicola. The president represents EMA in all respect, but who does control the president? By look of that, okay, the question is, by the looks of that line, the president is the ruler of EMA for the period given in between 2 GAs. Means I would not be so strong in the word, I would say, because I'm myself on the current I think my experience has been the language is definitely written in not that manner at all. Of course, the president has to be the representation of the organization, and basically the president has been elected by the whole community. So the president is the face of EMA, but then he or she, whoever will be president, or even currently, I don't have the final authority to decide what I want to do. And that's why we have the executive or the rest of the steering committee, and that's why we have the GA. If you see the voting rights of the GA can just take out the president or any of the management board, or the management board can take out the president, or anyone without even the GA happening can take out the president or vice president if the incumbent or either if the person is not doing his or her job. And it applies to anyone. It's not just about president, but any member can go through the same process. So the question from Morse was, looks like the task of the secretariat and the executive board to me, which is quite a departure in a usual management team of non-profit organization. The way it is written now, the task overlaps. I would say no, in the sense that, of course, the reason for the departure is also that we have constrained budget. So that means that we can have more people on the executive board and just say that, okay, there is one person which is taking care of legal and finance, who is also part of the executive board. But then it just adds on to the complication. And secondly, the secretariat roles are much more specific on certain tasks. They don't need to be involved in the whole governance of the decision making or the strategic aspects. So the main aspects where the legal and finance they will be supporting is to get the budget right, get the accounting right, taxation done right. And the same thing goes for the project management, where they're basically supporting the projects, wherein each of the units, the directors of the units will be more on executing the task and activities related to those units, which have a different impact for the three kinds of stakeholders we have. That's the students, alumni, and our external stakeholders. But maybe you can elaborate a bit more, Morse, because I'm not sure what aspects of the task you see them as overlap. If that's a feedback, we would definitely like to make it more clear in the internal regulations document, or also even maybe willing to change the titles or names to make it sound better and also make it clearer. Yeah, Nicola said that I only have the problem with the terminology since I don't have much legal. Yeah, I think even I'm not from a legal background. I've been learning a lot working with the legal team right now in the last 1 month. I've been involved in the statute amendments when I was the vice president and stuff. I've learned a great deal then, but I've never worked so closely with the three lawyers, but now I am. And I can see that, yeah, it does make sense. And they are the first ones who critique more than me, than anything else. So everything regarding the authority of the organization, the ultimate authority is the GA. It's not the president. So I would just want to make it very clear in the presentation today. Yasmin asked a question related to Article 27.2. EMA may be dissolved at any time in accordance with these EMA statute. What does it mean? It's a bit vague and open door for multiple interpretation. Yasmin, I think you missed the... I'm not sure if I'm the right person giving in the legal sound here, but I can get back to you with an answer from the legal team. Because what I understood from this terminology discussing with them when we're putting in this document was, in case there needs to be a dissolution at any given point of the organization, it will be done in accordance with the EMA statute and in accordance with the Belgian law. So,
right.
and if, yeah.
Yep, that's just a suggestion. We have, considering the scheduled time, we have only another 15 minutes, so that maybe you can address the current comments, and then maybe just go once all the way to the end, because I think once people see all the content, their questions are also updated.
I've already finished all the content just to
Perfect.
yeah. So it was more about questions now. And
Perfect.
Morse gives, there's a question, the GA is the highest decision-making body of EMA. It should only be the GA that can remove anyone from the board and not anyone from the management. It should only be the GA that can remove anyone from the board and not anyone from the management board. Yes, the GA has the authority to remove anyone from the board. But I don't get the second part. What do you mean by not anyone from the management board? Means this is
You
what
meant
the statute.
executive board. Just
Sorry?
see below the last question, the last comment.
I think the GA still should have the authority to, if they think that there's a non-performance of, means right now, if you see the clause, I can go through that here. Yeah, so appointment and removal of the management board. So the president and vice president shall be elected by the General Assembly. Yeah, and the president, vice president, the management board shall have mandate of 2 years. Yes. And if the management board does not, for any reason whatsoever, complete their mandate, their successor shall be given a reduced mandate. That is equal. So that's also fine. The president shall be elected by the GA attendees with each having equal vote. Same goes to vice president. So except the president, vice president, every management board can be removed from the office in accordance with the internal regulations with a 2/3 majority decision of the management board, that is the executive board, or the selection committee. The president and vice president can be removed from the office by 2/3 majority. Yeah. So I think, Morse, what you say and what you've written is the same. I hope it gives clarification. Yeah. So there's a question from Sora Jyoti, is that can you explain briefly how the new statute helps pursue new or more fund options? So if you see in the previous statute or the previous structure, the service teams were very much focused on internal. That means we had a communication service team, we had professional development, community development, or we still have that, of course. This statute is not voted. Then we had regional chapters, and then we had the internal affairs. Everything was very much focusing on internal. There was no effort put in to generate funds. And within this current steering committee, we already tried to change it, and we brought in partnerships and sponsorship, and we can see that it's making a huge impact. For this GA, we are already able to start securing, even if it's not a big fund, but start securing a lot of small sponsorship. Hopefully it will reach to something big. So we see the value of having an independent partnership and sponsorship units can significantly help us draft MOUs with the potential partners, generate sponsors for events and in general for EMA. So we need dedicated people working fully on this task, which has never been the case. So we see the value in it. So that's why this new statute can make a huge difference. Policy and quality assurance, it's just had been one aspect of CQAB before, but this is one of the way to really uplift and promote us as the most unique brand, if not the only unique brand in higher education. Talk more about the mobility, about the internationalization, about this whole perspective of jointness and quality assurance. We are the prime examples where, if you see, the world is moving into this direction. So how can we start generating more policy papers, be more influential in these roles, and a dedicated resource through which we can actually become partners in several EU projects, in national level projects. That's one of the way to generate funding there. And then if you see the outreach and cooperation, I've explained that a lot in the previous webinars, but I will just also mention here the regional chapters. The way it's organized today is that we have regional chapters, the 12 chapters. Some of the chapters are based on the volume, like China and India, and some of the chapters are based on kind of mixing so many countries together. It's not a very effective way. Of course, we have boards, but the execution, the task which really happens on the ground level, it's on a decline. Our relationship with the EU delegations are very little. It's only effective in certain countries. In general, the outreach of the chapter, the success stories of chapter is definitely not there, especially with funds drying out and now everything going through ESA projects. It is even more challenging. So what we're trying to say is that with this outreach, with this cooperation unit, the focus will be developing chapters in 3 steps. So first, chapters can start at a local level. That means that we can have campus Erasmus Mundus, that's what we call, in cities. So in a particular country, we can have several campuses. So even within a city, you can have several campuses depending on how big the city is, how big the population is. And then those campuses can have partnership or have affiliated members be part of these campuses. So the Action 2, Action 3 members can actually be part of it. Marie Curie is interested in this. ISEC is interested in this. How can we develop these hubs together, benefiting the higher education, benefiting the promotion of E+, and benefiting the activities for our members? Mostly it will be alumni or the prospective members coming to Europe, isn't it? So how can we develop services for that? So these campuses can have partnership, can have sponsorship, can generate membership fee for their own governance. So it's basically empowering them there. So then imagine from this city concept, and the outreach could be for a tier 2, tier 3 city, which we haven't really managed well before. And then from that, we move to a state, how do you say, like a country level. In some cases, it could be a state, for example, in USA. And then how it could move to a national level, which is what this chapter is today. And what the steering committee believes is that it has to happen organically. The national level structure has to come from these cities, from these states into the national structure. And the people who grow in these roles should come from the local base. And this is where we want to move. So we're not really dissolving the chapter, we're evolving the chapter thinking to give more empowerment to the local thinking, like doing projects, doing activities at a local level in an independent manner, which will have finally a global outreach. So we want the outreach and cooperation units, the regional chapters now, to use EMA platform to have a greater visibility, but do a lot of activities on a ground level through their own source of funding, which is not the case today. And this can only happen, we feel, when there is more collaboration at the local level, but also there is more opportunity for active people, because now we have elections for every role, and then once elected, people are not necessarily doing their duty. So how can we change this? So if you empower people at a local level, they can actually do a lot of activities in their own city, and they don't have to be dependent on EMA for funds or on the chapter for funds. So that's a mindset we want to really change. And that's a bigger picture here. And if you see, if we open our organization for affiliated members, we might soon have 30,000-40,000 people, I assume, because there are more than, if I remember my data number correctly, over 50,000-60,000 who have gone through Erasmus Mundus Action 2 and Action 3, who would be based in the respective countries. They would be interested to connect in some way to have the brand going. And this is one way for us to be inclusive and generate funds. When an external sponsor or a partner see, wow, this organization has so many full and affiliated members, it is a huge volume, which we can proudly talk about. Yeah, I hope that this helps for you guys to understand why there's such an urgent need for such a funds. And secondly, we're also trying to build these units to generate their own funds. That means that every unit should be capable or structured. This also answers back to what Daniel asked. Is it only the name change? No. The whole mechanism is that every unit should be able to generate their own funds, which will help them sustain volunteers, pay for the leaders, pay for the volunteers, and to generate more interest. So that's what we want to move towards in this mechanism. The question from Yasmin is that, or rather it's a suggestion, why not to align the dates of the appointing the management board with the fiscal year? It's a good question, Yasmin. It's been that we've always followed this term from, it's good to have some overlap, it's good to have some budgetary implication. If you see now, the service provider, means EMA has always been dependent on the service provider or from the EC's money. and it's always been from September to September, and that's what we try to keep it in that way. But I think in 2 years' time, I would not say now, in 2 years' time, it could be made into the fiscal year, because hopefully in those 2 years, we will be able to generate funds. Every unit will have their own fund, and then we will not be dependent on the service providers' money, but it will be just on us. And then we can actually change the structure. Because if we don't do it now, there will be no overlap. And then, because if you see, the new service provider contract starts in July this year, 2019, and goes on till July next year. So if a new board comes into place in January, that means that they don't have money, because now this current board is going in September. So there'll be no money for the new board. I would not call it new board, but they'll finish up the money in July next year. So there'll be no money from that July to again next term. It always, we can discuss. It's a good suggestion. Let me try to discuss. But it's also a suggestion from Nathan, who has been working from the previous, that this seems to be the best to have the overlap of the budget, so that not one board utilizes everything. Himi also says, suggestion rather, I would say, I think the most important aspect in any modification in the clarity in its rules and engagement, and this I could see in the new statute. Peradventure, we go through again individually and we notice any suggestion. I hope we can communicate. Please, I really appreciate. This has been a very open and transparent process. We're not, me or my team is not doing for our personal gain. We have nothing to do. We are doing this for the organization. So any useful comments, feedback, we would really appreciate this by end of this month. Because we also need some time to consolidate and put it. But the worst case, we can take in feedback until, say, 5th of February, because we need some time to also discuss. We meet every week once for 2 hours to go through this and make changes. So we would really appreciate, if anything, do send it over to me, and I will ensure that it's clearly passed on and taken into account. Okay. Yes, Yasmin's question is, does this statute gives us flexibility to suggest the membership fees? Absolutely, and that's one of the biggest change in the statute amendments, and it will be very clearly described in the internal regulations related to that. The question from Sarajoti is, will the unit be able to contract it externally, by example, universities for organizing survey and analysis? Yes. That's the idea. And as I said, we want to have independence in the governing of the units, and at the same time governing of the organization. So we want this whole structure to be much more flexible in the way it is dealt today. And that's why this whole empowerment, what I'm talking about, Surajit. So yes, the answer to that. Yeah. I would like to have your feedback. I was expecting there'll be over 100 people, because I was so excited since there were so many people registering. I hope that many of them are going to listen, because trust me, only your feedback and your questions make us reflect further. Of course, I would not say only that, but it really helps us to realign, rethink, and reshape, because we are also humans. We make mistakes, and more brain power is, of course, going to help this make better. So I think it's very important to have such a feedback. And there have been several different members who have been involved in other webinars through emails. So please send those feedback to us. And I hope it's been a productive and useful webinar for all of you here. And I hope that you get the understanding of why we're doing this and why it is needed for us for the future. And I really do hope that you guys support these changes during the GA. And we really hope that from February, hopefully this is implemented. We'll ensure that this will be executed before we finish our terms. So that's the promise I can do, but I really hope that you also follow and understand this and really support us, because this is really needed for our community today.
Yeah, that's very nice. I would like to remind everyone we have all of your questions here and we can save them. So right now, I would like to invite everybody to say a final message or just say thanks or no thanks or goodbye. And if you have still an additional question, you have now some one extra 50 seconds now to write anything that you'd like, because we save this and then we can go through at it after. If you go to the Facebook page of the EMA active members, I had posted there the link for this webinar. I posted that just now, I mean 2 hours ago. And so today or tomorrow, if you click on it again, actually you're able to see the recording of this webinar. So that means that if you have a team, if you have other friends from EMA who couldn't be here today, you can just tell them, okay, check out the recording. And that means as well that same post on Facebook, there is the comment section. So if there is any other questions you can think of, it's always nice to share the questions there on Facebook, because then all of us can see, all of us can kind of like give an opinion as well. Unless it's a very private question, then you can just send a private email to Pavan or to Lucia. But in general, I invite you guys also to keep the discussion going there, because then it's more collaborative.
Yeah,
I see a
and
lot of people sending
yeah,
thanks here.
but I would also like to address one important feedback, or one important question which Daniel raises, is that he says he's afraid that gradually is increasing the pressure of the members to find own resources. I would say yes and no, in the sense, because through this we are trying to empower the units. That means that we will be able to generate funds as an organization, which will be then distributed to the benefit of the organization. Daniel, this has been the story for last 6 years now, since 2013, since I was a vice president. I've seen we used to get a budget. I can be very frank and open here. We used to get a budget of nearly 350,000 euros from the European Commission just for Erasmus Mundus Association, for the governance, for everything. Today, we don't have it. Even for this GA, I'm not going to give you numbers, but it is less than half of what we had budget in the previous years. Last year, we didn't even have a GA, and this year we have less than half. So you see how much struggle the SC is. You have no clue. If I show you my emails, the discussion that I'm having with the commission and service provider, it's brutally deadlocked to literally even find €1 extra. Everything is constrained. So if we still think in this mindset of like, oh, it's going to be difficult if we want to get money, come on, trust me, we are being funded and supported to do our masters, to do our PhDs, or whatnot, by the European Commission. And still, if we don't have this attitude of giving back and putting some effort to generate our own funds for our own benefit, at the end of the day, let's remember that all these things, what we're doing, either is going to provide us soft skills, it builds in our CVs, it builds in leadership capacity in ours, but at the same time, it also helps us network, build brilliant friendships. So people need to see this as an opportunity for their career enhancement, for their skills development, for giving back to the community. So I think it becomes a important message here that people need to put effort. We can't always expect kind of everything is given on a platter. Means even for the GA, I'm paying from my own pocket. Even though I put in, I don't know, more than 1,000, I don't even count the hours for the last 1.5 years of being a president. I'm putting from my own pocket to come to GA. It's not that I'm financially more stable, or it is, but it's a conscious effort I'm trying to do, because it's a way I can give back so that somebody else can come in that money to the GA, who, because for me it's important that the future is the active volunteers who will take up the roles to continue the momentum going forward. So I hope that this is taken in a serious manner. The complexity of the funds, they're drying out. Let's be honest. We can't be going and telling EC, give us money, give us. They're not going to give us money. If that was the case, we should be having increase of budget, because I'm not sure how many of you have been observing in the last 1 year, and how many of you have even read this 1 year document from us, from the steering committee. We did over 250 events with zero budget across the globe. So we have the capacity to show. So I think we need to please rethink this mindset of the pressure. I don't think it's a pressure. I think it's a fun thing because people are going to learn how to become independent and kind of develop their own organizations. So it's kind of entrepreneurial thinking than and pressure of developing money. Okay, one question which is important, which Margaret asked, is how will we form the team that will develop proposals and manage the funding awarded for different projects? So every unit will be contributing to certain things. So there is a project support team, which is mainly focusing on helping each of the units to develop. So say that we are interested in a particular project we would like to apply. So the project support team reaches out to the unit and say, okay, here is an interest from the executive board. Would you be interested to kind of handle this project? Do you have the resources? Do you have the capacity? So we don't see that only one team only working on project. It has to be a sync. A project needs a communication team, a results dissemination team. It needs experts. It needs people from different background. So we see this as a collective effort, and that's why we have this as a project support team, which will focus on developing, helping proposals, etc. Yeah, Abdel, this is very common that you cannot see all the questions, but we are going to summarize the questions and then we are going to yeah, give I think, Tiago, we will send all the question answers to everybody, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can share the questions with you, Pavan, and then I would invite you and Lucia and the steering committee to maybe address those that you think are really relevant. Either you can post a response on Facebook or you can send an email. We have the names and emails of the people who asked, so we can also reach out to them in private after.
Yeah, there's some questions regarding some people are not part of the group and all those things.
Well, I mean, if people are a member of EMA, they can be a member of the Facebook group, which is called EMA Active Members. If people go on Facebook and click to join, then that will be processed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just say two comments I would like to address. One question is from Sarajoti. Does EU see us not doing something that they want us to do, hence less budget? No, I would not say that's why less budget. Means, come on, let's be honest. The Commission has different priorities in the sense that it's all driven by political sense. It's driven by their ambition of how they would like to structure. See, they wanted to bring all the EU funded programs under one umbrella, like ESN, Garage Erasmus, Oceans, and us. So that's the thinking what they have. But that also has implication on us to function independently, to have our own branding, because it's not necessarily there is an alignment with what they think and what we think. Of course, we're always trying to tell them what we need, but it doesn't necessarily match. So according to them, they're actually putting in more money for the alumni, for the organizations. But of course, when it comes to us, like directly to EMA, we don't have any direct money. Of course, they support our community portal, our website. So that's a good news. We'll have new ones, and in 2019, all the effort which has been gone in the last years, it's coming into reality. So that will be brand new website, and community portal will be there. But other than that, the only support we get is 2 SC meetings and 1 GA. And that's all the financial support EMA has direct access to. The rest, everything is through SR funding. Absolutely, Daniel. I think, I don't know if you observed the webinar last time, what we presented. I didn't present that in the statute, but it will be very clearly said in the internal regulations. We have a cross-cutting unit, which is called training and development. It's all about capacity building internally in EMA to train people on how to successfully generate own funds, how to successfully build partnerships, how to successfully lead projects. So there will be a unit specifically dedicated for this, and we didn't want to have it at a decision-making level because it applies to everybody, and it's more like a cross-cutting HR and a volunteering unit. Absolutely, Armando. I think it's a very good point. What he brings is that he has seen what has been going through the last years, and he totally understands what I'm trying to say. On the other hand, we should try to keep a balance. Working as volunteers is one thing. On the other hand, putting ourselves as a functioning as a charity is not very attractive to prospective active members. Absolutely. So I don't think we are going to move towards the direction of the charity. What we're trying to do in this structure is purely focus. I would not say purely, half or maybe even more than half, 70% of the work will be still towards the internal members. But then there should be certain way for us to generate funds to sustain ourselves, because that is important and that's needed for us to keep this community going. And I think our intention, Armando, has been to strike this balance. And also, I would like to say to Daniel that yes, if it is going to put pressure on the members, but we're not expecting that, okay, if you don't deliver, if you don't do this, something is going to happen. No, not at all. I think the idea is to just encourage and see how much we can actually reach out. And then we'll always have an opportunity to see if this way of thinking even is the right way for EMA in moving forward or not. But at least I think it's worth a try, because we've been kind of stuck in the same process, same structure for several years. And we feel that we need to kind of shake up things a bit. And also, it's a good way for us to also say that, yes, we have brilliant minds, and it would be good to execute some things on our own, and hopefully, and as I said, everybody hopefully get paid for the work what we're trying to do in some way or the other, at least the ones who are really putting endless time. Yeah, thank you, Morse. I definitely have you on the list of names for that particular unit for sure. Okay, I'm done, Thiago.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I sometimes just rush you, Pavan, just because then after the video that people get is a little shorter. So just a reminder, like I said, the same link that you used to register for this webinar, you can just access it tonight or tomorrow, and then the video will be there, the video recording, without editing. We're also going to edit to cut out some moments of silence, and then we make it available on YouTube, a bit of a shorter version of the webinar. Like I said, I posted here in the questions, we have the Facebook group, EMA Active Members. I posted a link there to this webinar where you can see the video later. And you can also use the comment section in case there was an issue or a question that you couldn't address right now. And you can also repeat it there, and we can all have this discussion. I'm saving now the chat here, all the questions that we had, and then I'm going to share this with Pavan. And also then, if something that Pavan thinks was relevant and was not addressed, then he can also address you guys either in group, as a group, or in private later. All in all, I thank you all for participating. We've had about 45, 50 people participating, and that's a very special group of people that put time aside to be part of, building a better institute. And I thank most of all for Pavan, for putting all this effort and being kind in explaining to us, and being very, I think, approachable in the way he answered the questions. So thank you all for participating, and have a great Saturday. And Pavan, you can also say goodbye again.
Yeah, thank you very much for I would say that I'm really happy. One thing why I'm very happy, I see a lot of new faces, and I really hope that some of you apply and become active part of these teams, because you are the future as such. And of course, we will be there to support, to see the organization grow, and I'll be super proud some years down the lane to see that, okay, all this effort has really made the brand. It really deserves the kind of brand. It is. I think I'm bidding. What I'm trying to say is that we still lack the brand of Erasmus Mundus, and it's important that we really try to do everything in our capacity to uplift it, because we should be super proud of having undergone this brand, or even undergoing it right now. Yeah, and I really look forward to see some of you at the GA. There is another webinar happening on the 16th of February, which will be followed up with the internal this statute amendments based on your feedback. There'll be an update of this, and also there'll be internal regulations which will be discussed in detail. And also we will be sharing practicalities of the GA during that webinar. So kindly attend, and if you cannot, please listen to the recording. Yeah, thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.